Oh my God, he's really going for the attention seeking.
I think he knows that we're recording.
Dear, oh dear. Oh, it's very cute.
Okay, Mariko, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Would you like to start telling me maybe a little bit about your work and what you do?
My work, like, is in employment. At the moment, I'm working like 1 day a week at a bonsai nursery. Oh, have you got something to say, Hopi? Yeah, so I'm working at a bonsai nursery. So that's like the Japanese art form where you've got, you know, your little pots and you make the tree seem older than it is. And so there's a bit of design and you do that with pruning and wiring. But yeah, so I'm doing that 1 day a week at the moment. Last year, I was also doing a bit of work from home finance, but my brain started melting out my ears and I was getting really badly depressed. So I had to stop doing that. And yeah, so it's just the 1 day a week at bonsai for the moment. So it's a little bit creative. There's a little bit of problem solving. You have to know how the plants work. And I'm still working on that. My boss knows so much stuff. So if it's unfamiliar species or sometimes we also do like sick plants, we try and make them healthy again. So he's the expert on that. But for the more basic bonsai stuff, pruning, wiring, repotting, design kinds of things, yeah, I do a bit of that.
Wow, that sounds really peaceful.
Everyone says that, which is kind of funny because whenever I go into work, my boss is a little bit stressed by just how many trees we have to work on because, you know, a lot of people bring in their trees for us to look after. And so he's, yeah, often actually pretty stressed at the start of the day. And we both like metal. So I'm not sure what that says. We can't really listen to it while we're working because it's in a sort of more public space, but we used to work out the back, and so we did have heavy metal playing. So if you could imagine, yes, it seems like a peaceful art form, but we're out the back going like rah.
Wow, it sounds cool. Okay, so you're doing a little bit of that, and obviously you have your YouTube channel and your artwork and your music. So
yeah,
tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think I just get bored easily and I'm sort of moving from thing to thing and I find it really hard to just settle. Like I know if I just worked at one thing, I'd get good at it and, you know, maybe go somewhere with it, but I don't have that sort of focus and I don't know, because I can do a lot of things. It seems a shame not to you know, just follow all that. Okay, so YouTube, God, I started that in 2008 and it was just like, you know, another thing to try. I really didn't expect anyone to watch, but that was back in the day when you could just vlog and vlogs were the thing on YouTube. So that probably helped kick my channel off a bit. And I was just talking about what I was going through. I think my first video might still be on YouTube. I don't remember what I said. I think it was pretty awkward, so I just don't I don't like watching any of my old videos. Even something I did like last week, I feel weird watching. But yeah, I think then my next few videos were about the first time I tried antidepressants and what I was going through there, because it turns out I have pretty strong reactions and side effects, which I didn't know at the time. And then it was just, yeah, talking about whatever I was interested in. I used to, gosh, it was such a crazy time. I used to talk a lot about, you know, weird little subcultures I found. So vampires, there's like the real vampire subculture. And then my own psychology and yeah, just whatever was going on. And there was a time where I was vlogging maybe twice a day, but this was before you could have long videos. I think it was like 10 minutes was the limit. And people who know my channel know I go on for a very long time. I've got some videos that go for like an hour. Yeah, so maybe it was a mistake for YouTube to lift that cap, but hey.
So you're like one of the first ones that started with YouTube, basically.
I mean, it was around for a few years before that. So I think I joined after Google bought it. So yeah. But back then they did have, instead of the like thumbs up, thumbs down system, they had the 5 stars thing. And then they used to have this ranking system for like, you know, who's doing the best out of musicians in Sydney and stuff. And so like, you know, I used to actually rank on that, which was a crazy thing, whereas now it's completely changed. But yeah, pretty old school. It was also before they sort of sanitized the platform, so you could have your own backgrounds, a bit like old MySpace, which makes me sound really old.
I was on
But yeah,
MySpace
it
too.
was yeah, it was really different back then. And so now, of course, it's much more polished content. And YouTube's constantly telling me, like, hey, you should have a niche, and here are the things you should do to build an audience, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm just going to keep doing my own thing. So my channel today, I took a big break at one point. But yeah, I started, oh, wow, I started it up again in 2016. So that's actually a while ago. Time's a bit weird. Yeah, so the way it is now, it's back to the same old chaos. And so sometimes I think most of the stuff I do is vlogging, but there's also videos where I've done music covers. For a while I've done like fashion reviews, which I don't even know how that happened because I don't really know anything about clothes, but you know, I'll dress up sort of in that goth metal style when I go out. And so, yeah, I found this company and they wanted to send me free stuff. And I'm like, sure. You're taking a
Wow.
break from that at the moment. But yeah, that's one of the weirder things that's happened to me on YouTube. Uh, and I've done like tech unboxings, mostly just because like if I buy a new gadget, I'm like, why not? I'll just chuck that on YouTube as well. And then of course YouTube is like, you should be a tech YouTuber, and that's not what I want to do. So I'm just jumping from thing to thing. Yeah, my channel's chaos. I refuse to specialize, which yeah, I think confuses a lot of my newer audience, but I've got like a hardcore following from who've been like following me from the beginning. And yeah, so they watch pretty much everything I do. And that's been really interesting because I was just making a video diary for myself in the beginning, because I used to try and keep paper diaries, but then if I went back and read it, I would like rip the page out and throw it out because it just was, like I said, I can't watch my old videos. It's the same thing with like writing diaries. It just feels really jarring. But if I make a video and post it on YouTube, someone else has seen it. So if I try and throw it out, I kind of can't erase their memory. And so it's like I can't throw it out. And then that means I'm less likely to take my diary and throw it out. It's a weird psychology thing for me there. So that's, yeah, my YouTube. Um, in a nutshell. And so I also do things like, yeah, the art and music. Probably music has been a bigger thing for me because like I actually went and did a music degree for my undergrad. And I've been in a few bands, mainly like heavier styles, so metal and industrial. I was in a few metal bands. The one that went for the longest was my girl band, Rainbow Death Ray, and I burned out really badly from that because I was just trying to do too much. And then at the moment, I've just gone back to like my solo project, which is more industrial, slow going, but yeah, I'm still chugging away. I would like to find another band, but finding a good match in Sydney has just been difficult. So yeah, and I can do most of the stuff on my own anyway. So yeah, with the art, that's sort of a more recent thing. Like I did eventually go and do my master's in art. And yeah, it was sort of more of a therapy thing because I was badly depressed. Didn't really like, this is before I got the schizoid diagnosis. Therapy had done nothing for me. I didn't know what to do. So I was just like, well, I don't want to sit on my butt. I'll just go back to uni and yeah, do the art thing. And I made quite a lot of stuff while I was there. By the end of it, I'd recovered from that episode of depression, which was a really bad one. But I didn't do much with the art after that. And it's only sort of like once I got the schizoid diagnosis that I was like, you know what, my whole life is just this big mess. I don't care anymore. I'm getting myself the art studio. Because like this is the room that I do most of the stuff in. And I just had no space for that anymore. Especially like once I've got music gear. It's just too, there's no space. I mean, I think you can see the little drum kit in the background, which I can't, it's just a glorified shelf. I've had that, damn, I don't know, a long time. Yeah, so I think late last year I'd been looking for an art studio or just somewhere to put all this extra stuff. And I found a place, but they didn't have any spots. And then yeah, I got the schizoid diagnosis and I found them again and they had space and it was just like it's expensive, but I don't
Mm.
care. I'm going for it. And yeah, now I'm there every week and I've actually been making stuff and finally figuring out a way that to make art that doesn't stress me out
Mhm.
because like realistic painting stresses me out. Oh my god, there's so much stuff I could talk about. But yeah, no, I've been in that, and then we've just done a open weekend, which was a lot of work, and my gosh, socially draining, but I made it through. And yeah, I don't know where it's going, but I'm making stuff again. So
That's good.
yeah, that's I probably the fastest overview I can do without like completely going off on tangents.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
I don't
good.
know. Yeah, I'm just constantly jumping from thing to thing. So like I've even done a bit of scare acting, because there's a theme park about 20 minutes that way, and yeah, at Halloween they build these little mazes, and so I've been in that a couple of years, and you just sort of hide behind a corner, jump out, gra, and because I do the heavy metal vocals, that works well.
Mhm.
Last year I had to do more of the statue thing. Yeah, and that's pretty much the only acting that I can really handle. I tried drama when I was younger, and especially back then I was so shy. It just wasn't a good fit. So like, what was I thinking? But no. So yeah, like I just sort of if I spot something that seems a little bit interesting, I want to try. I'll
Yeah,
try it. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's kind of how I originally found you or found your channel when I was
Yeah.
like researching about the Schizoid personality, and then I found your videos. And then I started like looking at your other videos and your website, and I was like, wow, that person is like really interesting. It would be so nice to have a chat. And not only about your schizoid diagnosis and your experiences, but maybe how it connects to all other areas of your life as well. So
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, the schizoid stuff. So like, I mean, I've only had the diagnosis since January. So for me, it's still a thing that I'm working through and trying to understand. And, it's been rough and all that. So it's hard for me to say, how much things are connecting because a lot of my reasons for the things that I did were from different parts of my psychology. And so, um, yeah, I'm still kind of working things out. And, yeah, it's kind of interesting when I didn't really think there was any market for schizoid stuff when I posted that first video, and then suddenly it's got so many views and just like, oh my god. That's been really strange for me. Um, but yeah, hey, whatever. I mean, that's what I do is I talk about my life, and if it happens to resonate with people, okay.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
just not enough information and like not enough talking about people's experiences with schizoid. So probably,
Yeah. Yeah,
people
I
to
did
reach out to.
notice, like, before I got the diagnosis, like it kind of happened in a weird way because I was just talking to my GP about how, I wanted to figure out what was wrong with me. And, here's one thing that a psychologist ruled out a long time ago. And I think my GP and I had both been thinking of it. And in the lead up between that appointment where I mentioned it and then the next one where we were going to work out what to do, yeah, I spent a bit of time looking at schizoid stuff. That's how I found your videos. But I did notice there was not a whole lot. There were a couple of accounts from like, video blogs from people who have schizoid, but a lot of them didn't post anything after that. It's just
Yeah.
like the one-off video. And then there's a lot of people who just give the DSM or ICD
Right.
definitions. And it's just like, okay, but, but what I did find, was enough to make me think, yeah, okay, that probably does fit. And then, looking up text-based sources as well. That was, yeah, kind of interesting because, yeah, if that first psychologist had like listened to me and explored it with me instead of just looking at a single case study that I didn't fit, like I could have figured this out a long time ago, but she was not. She was bad in a lot of other ways as well. So it's just unfortunate. And then I don't know what it's like around the rest of the world, but here there's been a focus on autism in females lately. And so for a few years, there were quite a few people in my life who were like, maybe that's what you've got. And I think, because Schizoid gets no publicity. I imagine there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, oh, am I autistic? Even though they don't fit, the rest of the criteria. So yeah, that was something that made things difficult for sure.
Yeah. So once you got that diagnosis, what has changed for you?
I mean, not a whole lot, because I'm still just living my life as I am. I mean, I did get the art studio because it was sort of like, when you read about it, there's not really any known way to treat it. Because it just hasn't been researched enough. And then I think like the Wikipedia was saying that your chances of having a good life are pretty low and all this kind of stuff. So I think that's partly why, I was just like, well, if my life is going to keep sucking, because it has for a long time, if my life is going to keep sucking, fuck it, I just spend my money on the art studio. And, so that's probably the main thing that changed, is just not giving a shit about that, doing what I want to do. But other things, it's sort of the more difficult emotional stuff, because once I got the schizoid diagnosis, then I started thinking more about, okay, how did I end up this way? And that's sort of forced me to realize that I have had trauma in my life, whereas in the past, just looking at that kind of stuff, I was like, oh no, I had a pretty good childhood. Like we're not super rich or anything, but we're comfortably, financially secure. My parents, they sent me to a private school, so our family is pretty good. It's sort of like conservative Catholic, but like with that strong family values thing. And so we're meeting up for all the big events, like Easter, Christmas, grandparents' birthdays, all that kind of thing. So like, there was a lot of that. But my youngest brother's got disabilities. And for a long time, I thought, like, people would ask me, like, oh, it must be so hard to have a disabled brother. But because I hadn't known very much, I mean, he's only a few years younger than me. So most of my thinking life, he's just been there. I would just tell people, like, it just seems normal to me. It's fine. But then with the schizoid diagnosis and like what can cause it, and the thinking more about trauma, I don't remember exactly what set it off. I think because I was having trouble sleeping, because my sleep pattern is a bit later than the rest of the family, and he, having the intellectual disability, is quite loud, and all his stuff going on in the morning. That might have been what it was, like just being so tired. And I used to be like, why can't I sleep? What am I doing wrong? But really it's the environment, and figuring that out, and then thinking, oh my God, it's the situation with the disabled brother. And that sort of has led through these series of, oh my God, this, and here's another thing about my life, and all that kind of stuff. Right. And just, realizing that actually did impact me a lot. And I've just opened that can of worms, and I kind of wish I didn't, because it's been really hard. And I'll like, I feel like maybe I got through one thing and then something else will come up, and it's just like, so that's been really hard, because like I'm seeing a psychologist again now, and she's really good, but I don't really understand what the point of processing trauma was. Like, I felt like she didn't trigger that off for me. I've just like asked her, like, why am I doing this? And she was saying, well, sooner or later it was probably going to come up. So it's just something, that we have to work through now. But I was doing okay, not realizing that stuff and not thinking about it. And it sort of made this year really difficult, going on the emotional roller coaster, because most of the time I'm just flat, but then I fall off these cliffs. So that has been really difficult. And I wonder, was I better off not knowing this stuff. On the other hand, though, before I got the schizoid diagnosis, I was spending a lot of time going like, why is life so difficult? Why am I just not managing to engage with the world and like get on with life and do all this stuff? What's wrong with me? How did I get like this? I was having a lot of that sort of thing. And then I was having issues with depression anyway. So yeah, it's sort of like now I feel, why did I open that can of worms? But on the other hand, it's not like my life was great before all that. So it's just, I'm hoping it leads somewhere better. But right now I'm sort of like in the middle of all that, struggling with that. We've sort of explained to my parents a little bit more about why I'm this way. That my parents are more like finance types, so they're not, great with the emotional stuff. And I imagine having the disabled brother like that would have taken all their energy. It's called so what I've been through is called the glass child trauma. I don't know if you're familiar.
I'm not sure, no.
So I don't know who came up with the term, but when you have a disabled sibling or a special needs sibling or just someone who's got really high needs, often the adults around you, they'll focus so much on this person who needs the extra help that they sort of see through you like you're glass. And then also there's this perception that glass is strong, but actually it's kind of not, and it can break quite easily. It's sort of like a paradox thing there. So yeah, someone came up with that glass child trauma thing, is just having adults see through you and expecting you to be stronger than you really are. And I mean, the situation's difficult for everyone in the family, but if you think about, my parents, they were adults when everything happened, so they already had learned the, adult way of coping with things, whereas I was quite young. I've got another brother who's a sort of the in-between child, but I suspect that I, had been just old enough, like maybe around 3 years old, I'd been just old enough to have some understanding of what normal family life was. And then everything, when he had his first seizure, everything went a bit crazy. I think we got dropped off at the grandparents' place while they're in hospital sorting things out. And so maybe as a child, I sort of knew that something had gone wrong, and maybe that's why it hit me more than the other brother. It's hard to know, but yeah.
That's really unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, it's weird to think about now because I've spent most of my life thinking things were fine. But when I sit back now and realize all this stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I must have just pushed all that stuff out of my mind and not realized. And so that's probably a big part of how I ended up, the way that I am, still untangling things. Yeah. I've just been talking a whole lot though, so if I was about to talk about something and lost the thread, you'll have to tell me.
Oh no, it's good. It's good. It's good. So I guess you've been always kind of in this tough position because of how things were.
Yeah, just without knowing. Yeah.
It's kind of out of control, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and I think that's probably why I didn't really ask for help a lot of the time when I was younger. It's just, oh my God, I keep remembering more and more things. Like so I was actually pretty good at school, especially things like maths and science. And I think in junior school, there was a program, like they had a before school program, doing some math stuff, problem solving stuff, and I didn't sign up. And after a while, my teacher, I think, rang my parents or something like that, saying, why isn't she in this program? Like, she really should be in this maths thing. And when my parents asked me, I think I said something like, I didn't think that they would be able to take me or something like that. Like I just never occurred to me to ask. And I didn't think that they would be able to take me because they're busy with my little brother, getting him ready for school. And so like there's lots of little events like that I'm starting to remember now, going, oh my God, yeah, that's the thing. And just like trying to do so much stuff for myself. And I think that's like with my girl band, it's a similar sort of thing. Is like I was trying to do way too much myself. I could have probably asked for more help, or I could have maybe relied on the other band members a bit more. But yeah, and then I just overdid it and burned out. So
So it's like
there's just
natural
like,
for you to be independent and like just do things by yourself. But then with the
yeah.
schizoid diagnosis, it opened this possibility that, okay, maybe you do need to ask for help sometimes. Maybe it's okay to do that.
Yeah, and I've been trying a bit more. I mean, I sort of go through phases where I get frustrated with people, like even people who I've been closer to. I can sort of be close to like one person at a time, I've noticed through most of my life. But then I might go through a phase of just not feeling it. But lately, so when things have sort of blown up a bit with the going through the trauma, if things get a bit tense at home, I've been opening up. I've got like one friend in particular who I talk to. My other brother, the not disabled brother, I've been talking to him more. And so, because like he grew up in the same situation, he understands. He's actually a really sweet guy. He's a much more functional person than I am. And then I've also been talking to my godmother, because I guess she's been like, I mean, she's my godmother. I'm not religious, and I don't know if she's religious either, but that's a thing, from growing up in the Catholic family. And yeah, I found it a little bit easier to talk to her. And so like we've met up occasionally just to, get a hot chocolate and talk. And I've, sort of just had the emotional outbursts there. And she's been really supportive. And she's actually talked to my dad, I think, about a few things that I've gone through, and that's been easier because I find it hard to talk to my parents. I mean, my mum is just, I think she feels really awkward with psychology type stuff, especially like the really emotional. I mean, she's Japanese, so mental health is not done well there. And then they've got that cultural thing where you hide what you're really feeling. I think she's also got her own social quirks. And so I do wonder if there's a genetic component, but it's hard to say because if she's less social, whether that's genetic that she's passed on to me or whether from watching her I've gotten some of that as an environmental thing, it's hard to untangle that. With dad is more of that sort of caring guy, but I think he's from that era before mental health was much of a thing, that sort of blokey Australian male kind of thing. And so he tries, but he doesn't get it. I've had depression on and off for a really long time. And when he tried to help, he's trying to help, but he'll say exactly the wrong things that you shouldn't say to someone who's depressed. So, yeah. And then, yeah, there's a few other reasons it's hard to talk to them about some stuff. But yeah, so I've made more of an effort to reach out to my friend, my brother, my godmother. Yeah, and I think, my psychologist is happy with me for doing that.
Yeah, sounds like, you're managing.
Yeah, it's tough. And I have some pretty dark moments, but I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, just seeing where it goes.
So is music or your art playing a role in your mental health or in processing that trauma, emotional health?
Not really, because like it's a bit complicated. So like I'm pretty aware that I'm not the usual schizoid stereotype, because I used to be a lot more closed in, more of that, shut down thing, especially in high school and maybe the first year or so out of high school. But I've gradually been able to learn how to talk more. I think being on YouTube helped because talking to a camera is a lot easier than talking to a person. And so I just got more of that practice. Also, my first job at McDonald's, I had a really good manager who really took me through just talking to the public. And in that situation, you're kind of following a script. So that was a way to ease into that. But yeah, no. And then I've probably always been on the milder end, I think. as far as I know, I mean, I've heard that schizoid, you're more likely to have it if you have schizophrenia in the family. I'm pretty sure on my Australian side of the family, there's none of that. On the Japanese side, hard to say because, you know, Japan doesn't really pay attention. My grandma, who I'm named after, was a little bit of a nut, but probably not schizophrenic. I don't know, but I don't think there's schizophrenia on that side of the family. Maybe just some other kinds of quirks that made me a little bit more predisposed to go this way. Because I know different people react to trauma in different ways. Mine's gone the schizoid route. And so perhaps there's a genetic component to, you know, why I took that route instead of a different route. Hang on, what was I talking about? Sorry, I just completely lost my
No, that's okay. So
oh yeah, because I don't look like the standard schizoid. But where was I going with that?
well, we're talking about the role of music and art in your mental health.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so why I bring up that I'm not the usual schizoid kind of thing is I still try to figure out if we've got all my diagnosis right. Because, like, you know, most of the time I've just thought all I had was depression. I did score a little bit high on anxiety, but not enough to fit into a disorder. So there's just like a higher than average baseline of anxiety, probably. And then schizoid explains a lot about my life, but not all of it. And so, I mean, I think that's probably what I found interesting about the videos of yours that I came across, because you're the only person mentioning dissociation. And I think that might have been more in the context of like emotional detachment kinds of things, but I have experienced other kinds of dissociation. And some of this stuff I'm working with my psychologist now because, you know, we've been trying to treat depression in the context of schizoid without really any success. Like, we've gone through so many different approaches, you know, CBT, ACT, DBT, schema therapy. I forget if there was others. So we're moving more onto my sense of self because I have a unstable sense of self. And maybe that's like why I'm jumping from thing to thing. It's just so, I mean, I was going to make a video about this on my channel. I just haven't got around to it. But it's like, one of them is, you know, a sort of detachment from myself across time. So like, I don't even want to watch last week's videos because it feels like it just, I remember making the video, it just feels weird. And then another one is like, you know, in different situations, you will be a little bit different. And I know these things are normal, but I seem to notice them more than most people do. And they just, it's a bit unsettling. And then there's the other one, which I don't like talking about a whole lot these days. I used to talk about more on my channel, but so my channel is called DestroyerMariko. Not just my name, it's got the destroyer part on the front. And that's sort of like, I don't know what to think, like, what is that? But it's the part of me that I don't know what to call it, but it's a sort of buried part of me. But a lot of that is why I went for art and music, is I'm trying to figure that out, express something. I mean, that also is why I have the gothic, you know, dark outfits and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I also have my little fluffy cat ears that I sometimes wear, but you know, that sort of darker stuff. I think that's more tied into all the creative stuff that I do, and might be a factor in how I've gotten past some of the more schizoid, closed in kinds of things, because I was trying to sort through that part of my psychology, and it has more of a push to the outside world in a way. So yeah, I'm pretty early in sorting that out with my psychologist because I was too scared to say anything to anyone professional for a long time. I think last year I mentioned it to my doctor, and you can kind of tell when people are uncomfortable when you explain too much. And then, yeah, we didn't really talk about it too much, but with this new psychologist, I'm so tired of doing psychology because I've seen a lot of people and a lot of them just were no good for me. But this time I'm just like, I really want to figure out what is going on with my head. So I'm trying to be more honest with her. And I've like written up this huge things, like these documents explaining things. And some of the stuff I did used to explain on my YouTube. Unfortunately, I deleted a lot a while back, which
You
I kind
watched
of wish
them?
I had.
Because you
Sorry?
watched the video? Because you watched the videos?
Oh, no, I went through a period where I just deleted almost everything from my channel except things that had,
Oh,
like, pets in it or,
oh, okay.
other things that I wanted to keep, and I don't remember the reason, but, I mean, like, I tried dating at one point because, everyone's like, "Yeah, that's what eventually you'll grow up and blah, blah, blah." And, I think I was seeing that psychologist, the second psychologist, the one who said I couldn't possibly be schizoid. And so she was really pushing me into, these directions that just weren't suitable. She wasn't really taking me
Mm,
seriously. I didn't know enough at the time to realize that she was potentially damaging.
mm,
And so, yeah, I did try dating, and the first guy that I was with, he turned out to be kind of toxic, and he did not like that I was a YouTuber. He was very jealous, and
mm.
I think I slowed down my YouTubing, and I'm not sure
Yes.
if that might have been around the time that I deleted a lot of stuff or if it was after that. I don't really remember the timeline, but I think that was a big interruption to my YouTube for sure. And yeah, at some point I deleted a whole bunch of stuff. And um I mean, on the other hand, I don't think I want to watch it, but it might have been interesting for other people to see how far I've come, because I used to be a lot more crazy on my channel. Especially because back then I was more anonymous, whereas now more people from my like real life are starting to watch
Yeah.
my videos, and that's getting a bit awkward. So how much can I really say? I don't know.
Um,
Um, so that's another thing I've got to figure out at some point. But yeah, oh gosh, just thinking about that psychologist, like she told me to stay with the toxic relationship because at least you weren't bored. And I'm like,
oh,
now
wow.
I'm like, are
Really?
you serious? Like that's not a good reason to stay in a relationship. Holy crap. And yeah, I had two more relationships after that, and it just yeah, it's not for me. Uh yeah, I've sort of come full circle with that stuff, just to back to where I was. But actually, now that I think of it, in terms of sense of self, with that first relationship, that's another thing where my sense of self really like just got a little bit crazy, because that was so out of my nature that I felt like I had to be a different person just to be in the relationship.
Mm.
And so there's a few weird things that happened with that as well, because oh, it's too much to get into. But um yeah, I mean that's no longer an issue because I stopped trying to do relationships, but at the time was a really weird experience, and just seeing the real breaks in my sense of self. um
Wow.
yeah, I think the only time I didn't have that, like I've currently got the DestroyerMariko thing going on again. There was a period of time, when I was really depressed about 5 years ago or so, where I didn't feel any of that, and I thought I've finally grown out of it. But yeah, no, it's become an issue again. I'm just like, I don't understand. So like, am I crazier than I realize, or do I have some mild aspect of schizotypal or schizophrenia? Because I know that they're on the same spectrum as schizoid. I'm not really sure at the moment,
Mm,
and
mm.
think I've just gone way off whatever topic I was supposed to be talking about, but there's some more stuff.
So you use this term sense of self, and that
Mm.
maybe it's a bit unstable when it comes to your situation. You tend to change and experiment with different things. So how would you define sense of self in your own words? What is it?
I mean, that's difficult, isn't it? But so like, I just like when I look at myself and the things that I do, um, it just seems weird sometimes, like, especially how far I've come since school. Because I really had, if people had known me in high school, you would have been able to see a lot more of the schizoid stuff going on. Like, I was really closed off. I found it really hard to speak up at all. And like now I've been a heavy metal singer on stage with the like death growl, full on raw kind of thing. And I have this crazy wardrobe. I was never like, I never gave a crap about fashion. And yeah, now I've got this insane wardrobe that's so full. I'm kind of glad that fashion company hasn't sent me any more stuff, because where will I put it? It's just like, how did this happen? How did I go from this like really shy, closed off thing to the, it just feels really weird. And then, you know, I can do all the heavy metal stuff, and then I can do the bonsai, and I can also do, like, I learned to do the retail thing and the, like, you know, hi, how are you? I can't do it now though. I can only like do things when I'm in the situation that they're relevant to. So like right now I've got the sort of talking to the camera way of being, and then I'll go off and I'll just go back to the staying at home version of me. And it's just like, I guess like behavior is the obvious one, like the different behaviors, but there's something deeper about the way that I feel. And if I think about it too much, I'm going to get a little bit of that dissociation where I'm like, here's me speaking to the camera versus like watching myself speaking to the camera. That happens sometimes if I think about it. And it's just, it's an odd experience. And so, I mean, maybe the sense of continuity within the self and just things feeling consolidated, it's hard to explain, and I don't know why I have a problem with it. When, you know, when you think about it, it's really quite normal, but for some reason I just can't. And like trying to define myself, I have some kind of resistance to that, because there's just so much, I don't know. Yeah, I guess also, like, you know, I went to the Catholic private school, right? And you have to behave a certain way, and then on the inside, that's not what was going on with me. Yeah, maybe that's done it a bit to me, as I'm just used to compartmentalizing different things, and then with the home situation, yeah.
You said you had a resistance, like resistance to defining yourself,
Yeah,
or
well, I mean, like, if you think about it, it's I don't know how old you are, but I'm older than most people think I am. And so like these days, a lot of the younger kids, they'll have very specific labels for themselves about, particularly with like gender and sexuality and, you know, the groups that they fit into and all that. But I think when I was growing up more in the 90s, it was not like, you know, putting a label on yourself was just like, why would you do that? It's more like, no, you can't label me kind of thing. And I think I've absorbed some of that, because like trying to be that specific, I mean, that's one of the things about being nervous about making some of the schizoid content, because by doing that, I know I'm inviting the schizoid label onto me more, and that's not something that I'm interested in. I don't want to be a schizoid YouTuber. I just want to make my own stuff. But I think I've accidentally fallen into that role in at least some people's minds, because when if I post a video and it says schizoid or SPD or therapy or something in the title, at the moment, those are the ones that are getting the most views. And it's just like, and I don't know, sometimes I'll intentionally self-sabotage. So I actually have a lot of fun choosing the worst thumbnail that YouTube comes up with. You know, they have the automatic thumbnails. And so instead of making one, I'll just find the one that's the funniest and pick that. And then often if I have a video do really well, then I'll go and film something else that I know no one's interested in, like ants. I did a series of ant videos. I've actually got a little ant farm that I got myself for Christmas, but I haven't been able to use it because there haven't been any queen ants flying around. I'm not even that interested in ants. It's just like one of those things.
So it's like you constantly need to change so that
well, I
don't
don't want to
get
be
labeled.
I don't want to be trapped in any single thing, like, you know, like when YouTube, you know, gave me all these signals saying I should be a tech YouTuber. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna be made to do a single thing. I can't accept that, you know. I'm not sure what the reason, like, is it that I'm so influenced by that old attitude of you can't label me, or is it something just more fundamental about me, or is it something to do with the way that my sense of self is all over the place,
Mhm.
and so I've got all these competing ideas. I'm not really sure what the reason is, but yeah. And then, like, I'm not actually that interested in the whole schizoid thing. Like, I know I probably could do better as a channel if I just focused on schizoid, because clearly there's a gap in the market for it, or whatever you want to call it. Um, but yeah, I'm not that interested. I was interested while I was trying to work out what my issue was. Now
Yeah.
I've got that, and it's more just the consequences. And I actually haven't really watched much schizoid content since I got the diagnosis. I've just made my own stuff. Um, yeah, like, I don't have that intense interest that some people seem to. I just move on to the next thing, and yeah, it does feel a bit weird that I've accidentally found myself in the whole schizoid YouTuber world, but hey, that's where my life's at the moment. Um, I know it probably frustrates people when they sign up to my channel and they think they're getting one thing and then I'll go off and do another thing, but I don't know, maybe I don't care about that because I'm schizoid and I'm not interested in impressing people or giving them what they want. Maybe that's part of it. And that sort of like roundabout way.
That is a
I don't know.
possibility. It definitely sounds like could be schizoid. Like, don't put a label on me. I don't want to be crap.
Yeah, like, don't define me. And it's kind of funny because, like, I can think a bunch of stuff and then I'm like, maybe that is a schizoid thing.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay, so I asked you before about the role of music and art in your life, and you said
mm,
it kind of links into this maybe a bit more private part of you, a bit darker, that
yeah.
allows you to express it.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I will say actually,
Hmm.
with emotional stuff, so like especially when I was younger and in that more overtly schizoid way of being, I did find that singing was a way to get a level of catharsis. Because I was not able to express my emotions, and so singing um was just a way to, like, feel that kind of release.
Mm.
So that's probably something that it does tie in a bit more schizoid. That's more with the clean singing though. So like the regular, I used to sing Evanescence, for example.
Hmm.
My voice is sort of on that higher end, and I
Oh,
tend
wow.
towards more classical rather than rock, probably because, conservative background. I was fed a bit of opera when I was younger. Although I don't do the opera, but my style is sort of more classical than it is contemporary.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that clean aspect might be a bit more the expression.
Hmm.
Um, with the art, I guess, like, there have been things probably more on the depression side in terms of self-expression. I mean, I am still working out how much schizoid has played into stuff, but I think a lot of the art did tend towards the darker sense of self. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm not sure about that, but everything kind of links, and art and music, you can apply them to so many things. So it's probably a bit of everything, really. Um, yeah, with the singing, with the growling, that's definitely from the darker sense of self stuff.
Mm.
And for someone my size, to like make those kinds of noises, it's just, yeah, I do have a sense of like uh a weird little sort of glee that I have the two really extreme sounds. It's not been good for me in terms of finding a band, because a lot of the bands here, they want you to have that more rock style of singing, and then the scream that still sounds pretty human. So the two voices, the clean and the scream, they're very close together. Whereas
Hmm.
my clean is like the pretty, almost like, sort of
Hmm.
semi-classical girly kind of sound. And then I've got like the bear demon kind of thing. Like, mine are a little bit too far apart, but for me
Right.
that's
Right.
it's a bit more entertaining for me, because like if they're too close together, who cares? It's more fun with the extremes. I think I do a lot of stuff with extremes, I am a little bit preoccupied with duality, I guess because of that disconnect between the sense of self. I mean, you know, I spent 13 years being the good little Catholic schoolgirl and then get out of school and go into heavy metal. So, you know, there's definitely some extremes going on there. And so that's a theme with a lot of the stuff.
What is it about the dualities that kind of keeps you preoccupied with them?
I think just that I find it relatable. Like, I don't know if there's anything more than that. Like, yeah, there's just, it's like one of those deeper things. Yeah, because it's just that relatability for me. Sorry, I don't really know if there's a more explanation.
Like relatability, like in what way?
Well, because I have that disconnect between the different parts of myself, you know, especially like, I don't know if you can see in the background, like some of the DVDs I've got, they're a bit far away, but a lot of it is, if it's not a split personality thing, then it'll be someone who's like got some serious inner conflict kind of thing, or maybe they've been falsely accused, or there's some interplay between the light and the dark in there. And quite often when I watch those kinds of movies or, you know, TV shows, or maybe read a book, that does sort of set off the sense of self stuff a bit, and then that part of me is a bit more, it becomes more of a thing in my head. And it's just relatable. I actually sent a clip from one of those shows to my psychologist. It's just like, here's the most relatable thing to what I experience. So yeah, it sort of gets that kind of reaction, and I'm still trying to understand it because I don't know how to interpret it. For the past while, I've been trying not to humor it, because I feel like if I go too far down that route mentally, that's just going to make it worse. But I don't know if that's the healthiest approach. So there's still so much that I'm working out. But yeah, I'm finally talking to the psychologist about it. So, you know, maybe she can help me figure it out.
And this conflicts and this kind of disconnects and kind of maybe looking for them, is it something bad for you? Does it provoke, like, you know, negative reactions, or positive?
It's uncomfortable. Yeah, like, because it's sort of the part of my psychology that I feel is a bit crazy. Like, I can talk about depression easy. Even schizoid to me seems relatively normal. I can talk about those two things easily, but with my sense of self, it just seems like one of those things that makes me crazier than I want to be. And I think also part of it, I mean, I'm trying to think of stuff in a schizoid frame as well now. And so I wonder if part of it is a sort of a self-protection thing, like, you know, there's a part of my psychology that I have to close off. I wonder if that's a part of it. I don't know. What was the question?
Like, does, you know, I mean, you know, if it's too uncomfortable, we don't have to go that direction. But I was just curious, is, you know, pursuing this kind of maybe dualities or contrast or conflicts, is it like essentially something bad, something that provokes negative experience for you, or?
Right, that's right. Yeah, no, like sometimes it can be really uncomfortable. And I think, I mean, these days it's not as bad as it used to be. There was a period of time where it was really dominating my life. Nowadays, it's mainly just this sense of being on edge when it's flared up a bit. And then often when I go to bed, if that is in my psychology at the time, it can be really hard to sleep because it you know, really preoccupies just everything. So that's the main problem with it now. In the past, and this is like trying to explain it to my psychologist as well, is difficult, because if I'm not currently experiencing it, it is hard to remember exactly what it was like. But in the past, I think, you know, I mean, it's actually has helped me in areas of my life. So I can't say it's all bad, because, you know, having that that feeling of something that needs to come out in some way. I mean, I tried to manage it in a way that wouldn't get me into any kind of trouble. How successful I was. There's so much stuff I could talk about that I'm not going to, because I'm not ready for that. But trying to manage whatever it is in a way that fits into my life without completely screwing it up, that is what led me into things like actually trying music, like going to uni and doing music. I mean, for a lot of people that's probably not remarkable, but for me, coming from the conservative Catholic background, my Australian family, you know, they're doctors, they're lawyers, accountants. That's the background I'm coming from. And then having the half Japanese Asian, you know, the Asian stereotype as well of, you know, going for those good careers. Like, that's the world I came from. I was good at maths and science. But, you know, I struggled a lot with depression and I was very closed off. But then I have this other part of me that's like, you know, wanting to get out into the world. And so I found myself in music, you know, learning to express more stuff around people as well, you know, like getting on stage, my God. And with some of the art as well. The thing about, you know, having the open weekend is I finally had to show people some of the art that I've been working on. And some of these things, unless some of it people would have seen on DeviantArt, but no one from my real life looks at my DeviantArt. And then a bunch of other stuff I've now put on my website, but that's the stuff that I've been working on since I got the space in February. And that's got a lot of that part of me in it as well. And I don't know how much people saw what was going on there. I think your screen's frozen. Oh, no, you're back. A lot of people, I think, probably don't understand what that art was about, but it is from that part of me that I was just like, oh, shit, now everyone's going to see those things. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it sort of forced me to actually do some stuff instead of just wallowing in depression and, you know, having suicidal thoughts and stuff. Like, it's the part of me that's, especially like, you know, what year is it? Maybe 15 years or so ago, when I was like, I got out of school and I think I tried the first university degree. I've dropped out of a lot of degrees over the years. And I just, you know, school, I was doing okay because there's a clear progression. There's things that you have to do. And so I was just getting through year by year, but I didn't really think about what do I do at the end of it. So I did a very generic degree, lasted a semester and dropped out. And then coming from a conservative background as well, dropping out of uni, wow, that's really bad. So I've sort of lost where I was going with that again. You're pushing me to do stuff, right? No, I don't remember where I was going.
So we were talking about your art. We were talking about that part of you. We're talking about
okay.
the
So yeah, I
dualities.
think after that was after I dropped out of uni the first time. That's when I first got an actual diagnosis of depression and started seeing the first psychologist, who was also really bad. Her thing was like, happy people live longer. Of course they do. Yeah. Do you know what really depressed suicidal people do? It's just, she was, I should have just left. I didn't know at the time that I should just leave when people are that dumb. But yeah, no, so I was doing really badly. And I think, you know, I didn't know what to do with my life. So, you know, I didn't want to keep living, but there was that part of me that still had things to say. And so I just humored it for a long time. And I think that is what I credit with, you know, getting me more out into the world and trying to manage things and just doing all the crazy creative stuff that I've ended up doing. So yeah, a good part of the art, music, fashion sense. I would suggest even bonsai might be tied into that a little bit, because yes, it's Zen, but there's also an aspect of like you're controlling a life form when you're working with bonsai. You do have to negotiate with its quirks, but you are forcing this poor little plant to grow in a specific way. And a lot of the stuff that we do in bonsai is actually quite brutal for the tree. I've started helping out with classes occasionally, and we have had a few students who have nursery experience, and they're used to just doing a straight transplant from one pot to the next to minimize the stress on the plant they're working with. But we'll get in there, we'll scrape out all the roots, chop a whole chunk out, and do all this stuff, which, if you think about it too much, is kind of horrible for the tree. Like, if the tree had feelings in the same way that we do, you would not do that to to a person, so I think, like, a lot of the things that I've pursued have come from that part of me. I don't really, and so when that part of me went quiet for a number of years and I thought I'd grown out of it, I was quite lost. I didn't know what to do, and I don't know if that was caused by my depression or if my depression was worse because of that. I don't know what came first, because I'm a bit vague about the timelines. But yeah, that was a really hard time, because then I had to think, okay, what do I like just on my own without these weird psychological things going on? And I think you can sort of see it in some of my art. Like, I started exploring different things in my art because I was less preoccupied by that stuff in my head. So I really don't know what it is, and how to interpret it, but that's something I'm working on, and alongside where does Schizoid fit in, and
so it's like giving a voice to that part of you through art, through music, even through bonsai work.
I mean, what's interesting is sometimes I'll start doing something because that part of me has pushed me in that direction, but then I'll find my own kinds of interests. And like, so probably the easiest example is, like, I used to watch a lot of stuff to do with, like, natural disasters, things that are destructive. I mean, you've got the DestroyerMariko, that's there for a reason. So one of them, I used to watch a lot of air crash investigation, and I think the original motivation was because plane crash, dramatic, explosions and stuff. But when you watch it, like, there's actually a lot of interesting engineering stuff. And so for, like, just when I'm not in that state of mind and I'm watching it, I'm like, that's cool. And then I start deluding myself that I could fly a plane if I had to, which yeah, right. But it's like that sort of level of trying to understand what's going on there. Yeah, so there's things that do happen like that. Is I'll get into something for one reason and then find something else that I like in it. Yeah, but even when that happens, I'm still jumping from interest to interest. So, like, my boss would probably take me on for more days of the week if I could handle it, but I actually can't do more than one day a week. I'm so exhausted. I usually need to recover the day after. I think partly because it's a more physical job, but also, like, just having to be on, paying attention for the whole day. And I don't know. I used to be able to work retail and just stand on my feet and do the social garbage stuff that you have to do with annoying customers. And I used to be able to do that, more than one day a week. And I think that last depression really just damaged me a bit. And I feel like also over time things are getting harder and harder for me, which isn't great. Hopefully I can turn that around still, but the overall map is downhill. So I don't really know what's wrong with that, but yeah, just finding it hard. And in some ways I do wonder if getting the schizoid diagnosis, one of the things that might be a negative is because there are such low expectations for the disorder in terms of, improving your life and being social and all that. It's very easy to use it as an excuse to sort of indulge in not trying too hard and being less social. And I mean, it's the balance of the self-care. Okay, so I need to do less of the socializing sometimes, but on the other hand, I do recognize that we're a social species, we evolved from tribes and so on. So there is like something in there that humans need that somehow my brain has maybe blocked out, or like I can recognize that that's a thing, even though I don't feel I want to socialize. So trying to balance it.
So balancing that alone time and self-care with social time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, you know, I recently had that studio open. That was over a weekend. We had people coming in, seeing our space, you know, being able to talk to us. And, you know, like one of the good things about the studio, the people that are also in the studio, is when we do have these group things, they don't push me to be social. So like I'm sort of there, but I'm not, like I was probably the only one on the weekend who was still actually working in my space, because you know there were a lot of them, especially on the second day, they were outside having drinks and talking to each other. And the first day I was okay, but at the end of the day I really felt the social exhaustion, which I haven't had that level of social exhaustion in a long time, because I just haven't gone anywhere, haven't done much. The second day I went into that already tired of the whole thing. So I spent most of the day in my space, except when like a friend turned up. And I just like, that's just how I had to cope with it. And then when we closed our doors and everyone went, usually I don't play my music when other people are around, because I'm aware that most people are not into metal industrial kinds of stuff. But that day I was just like, nah, fuck it. I need my music to just, and I just stayed in my space cleaning up. And I think some of them didn't even realize I was still there. And when they realized, they're like, oh, come out and have a drink. And I'm like, nah, I'm staying here. I can't. So like I was around people, but I was always also keeping to myself. And I think that was an okay balance. But it's taken me a while to sort of recover a bit, I think, from the whole thing, because I was so busy. And it's just not my natural sort of thing to do.
Right.
And then so I wonder, like, if I didn't have the schizoid diagnosis, I mean, I probably wouldn't have the space, because that's partly how I ended up there. But say I had the space and I didn't have the diagnosis, would I have pushed myself more to try and like act social and just stand around awkwardly? Or, you know, am I more inclined to, you know, have that, or try to find that balance and keep to myself more? I don't know. I think I have put less effort into going to gigs, but that might have been the case even without the diagnosis. Like, you know, heavy metal gigs, you know, after the whole pandemic, I was trying to do that again, but I just found myself getting sad because I want to be on stage, but I couldn't be because I don't have a band, and the place I used to do my solo stuff hasn't reopened. The pandemic's another topic, if I go on another tangent for a minute.
Right.
Because when another interview. Huh?
We would need another interview for just for the pandemic itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, in short, when it happened and we started locking down, I was like, I'm fine. It was kind of amusing to see like the rest of the world freaking out about having to stay home. I'm like, I've been training for this my whole life. And, you know, I was sitting there like going, finally, there's some kind of horrible world event that actually affects me. I can get excited about this one. But I think like it has set my progress backwards in terms of engaging with the world, because it gave me too much of an excuse to stay home. And, you know, maybe one of the reasons I'm doing okay having schizoid is because I didn't have the diagnosis for so long. I thought my only problem was depression. Depression is pretty treatable. And I thought, you know, eventually maybe I'll figure out how to get out of this. Whereas I noticed with some of the commenters who've come by my channel, some of them do seem a bit more defeated, like there's no point trying. And I think if you have that diagnosis that, you know, most people are saying you can't change, that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
What do you think? Do you think you can get better?
I don't know. I'm still working through stuff. And I mean, you know, when I was just treating depression, none of the therapies worked. I did have some pretty bad psychologists who just didn't understand.
Right.
I also can't really take medication. I think there was a period of my life where medication helped, but I get bad side effects, and I didn't realize that I was losing a lot of weight because I was on this medication. And when I tried to go off it and then had to go back on it because I was getting depressed, and that's when I realized, especially when it wasn't doing enough, so we doubled the dose and I could not eat, and then I've tried, I spent a good part of a year with a psychiatrist who was really trying to work within my body's tolerances, the strategies he used to try and wean me onto things. We tried a lot of stuff and didn't work either. So I can't take medication, and I do think it helped at some point in my life. So it's a shame I tried to go back onto that medication, but now I seem to react in the opposite way. So instead of it helping and also ruining my appetite, this time it didn't help, and I was eating a lot. So I'm just like, maybe one day my brain will change in some way that and the antidepressants will work properly, because I don't think we fully understand how that happens. But yeah, I thought that I do feel that I probably need medication of some kind. We just can't find one that I can tolerate. And I'm nervous to try, because if I try something and I react badly, then I lose the whole week trying to get over it again, and can't go to work, can't trust myself driving, all that sort of thing. So I'm reluctant to try anything unless I get desperate. And maybe if I hit a point where I can't work again, because there's only been one period in my life where I stopped working altogether, and that was that really bad depression about 5 years or so ago. So that was with depression, trying to solve that, no luck. Now with SPD as like the context for the depression, so the psychologist I'm seeing right now, she's actually taking that into account. She's not pushing bullshit on me. She's actually really detailed. I never had a psychologist before actually have an intake form where I could explain, what's going on with me, what worked, what hasn't in the past. I've never had that before. This is like this clinic where they're just much more detailed. And then when I went in and it turns out she read it all. Like, I was a bit worried I'd be rejected just from having too much stuff and sounding too difficult. But no, she's like, oh, I really love detail, and, keep sending me stuff. Here's my email. And I've just never had anyone. Good. And especially because writing is easier for me than being in a session trying to talk to her. Because sometimes my brain will just like shut out. I go into therapy mode and I just I can't think about some things. It's hard to break through that sometimes. But so now I've got a psychologist who is trying her best to understand things in the context of SPD, and we really have hit a brick wall with that. So like I've had on my 8th session, she said, like, is any of this helping? And I had to say, like, not really, nothing much has changed, but I don't want to stop coming because, she's the good psychologist and I don't know what else to do. Before I found her, I was considering inpatient treatment because my life's just like sort of falling apart like that. And I've sort of been feeling more desperate as time goes on because I've tried so much stuff. Nothing has really worked. It's frustrating. And so, we have hit that brick wall. Now we have moved on to the sense of self stuff, and that might end up helping me at some point. I'm not sure if that's relevant to other people with SPD, because maybe that's just my combination. Maybe I've got some other comorbidity that'll help me with the SPD, which it already seems to have, because I can talk more in that covert schizoid kind of way. I've learned a bit better to socialize, and I'll still go for the classic strategies of, one, if I'm at a party, find the dog or the cat or whatever it is and like harass that instead of talking to humans as much as possible. And then 2, hang around the food table and stuff my face, because if I've got food in my mouth, no one will be annoyed that I'm not talking because I'm too busy eating.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, this advice for living with schizoid personality.
Surviving
Stuff your face and look for animals.
Find the animals, and find the food. Those are my top 2 strategies for getting through a thing. Yeah, but like I have gotten better. I have, found ways to talk more. Like, when I'm at a family event, I will talk to
Yeah.
them more instead of, but yeah, my Australian family's events are a bit chaotic because there's a lot of people in the family and they're all very chatty, and you'll be in one conversation and suddenly someone else will come along and it completely changes. And
Yeah.
sometimes in those ones it's easier to stand back. I've got another one actually, because I go to metal gigs, right? And when you're at like a pub or a bar or something, there will be people who sometimes come and talk to you, or you can just stand in the corner looking awkward. And I guess being an underground event with a lot of people who are sort of social outcasts, you can get away with just standing around. But if people
Yeah.
are trying to talk and you're just a bit tired of it and you want to escape, the moment the band starts tuning, I'd like make a beeline to the front. This is what I used to do when I had the energy. I made a beeline to the front, and because I'd just be like, I want to see the band. And I think at the time I was on antidepressants, so I had a bit more energy, and I would be up the front doing the headbanging. If you're headbanging, no one can talk to you, because if they get too
Yeah.
close, I had these really heavy dreads. If they got too close, they get whacked. Yeah,
So
so I just
as
get
a
really
kind
into
of,
them.
yeah, so these are your kind of strategies to I guess stay comfortable, be comfortable, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of an interesting thing, finding the ways that people find okay, um, in terms of the way that you're behaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are ways to manage it, and yeah, I've sort of worked on that. But I know I was supposed to be talking about, do I think I can get over the whole, I can recover. I think schizoid is not the thing that I want to recover from, because it's fine for my life. Like, I don't mind. I guess that's part of the reason schizoids don't come forward for treatment, because we're fine with the way we are. Like, I have no problem being less social.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe there is some part that I'm in denial that wants to reach out,
Mhm.
like, because we are a social species. That's part of our survival as we evolved. But for where I'm at, I'm fine. I'm doing enough with, like, online connection is enough for me if I need to
Mm.
express something.
Yeah.
I have a few online friends who I will probably never ever meet in real life, and in some ways that's more comfortable. Um, uh, so like, that's fine. But what is the real problem for me is the depression. Like, just not enjoying life, not enjoying the world.
Mhm.
I Having negative feelings. Like, if it was just neutral, maybe that would be fine. I remember as a kid, I was able to get excited about things, and that hasn't happened for me for a while. Um, I think these days, if I have any excitement, it's very muted and it doesn't feel like excitement. Um, I probably do experience it, but maybe that's sort of that um, emotional detachment, emotional dissociation kinds of stuff. I just can't.
Anedonia.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
that sucks. But when I fall off the cliff and get really depressed, that's not fun. And I mean, how morbid should I get? I do have this sense that at some point one day I probably will kill myself, but I'm sort of trying to delay that as
Oh.
much as I can. That's sort of the game of life that I'm in at the moment, I guess. So I don't want to be too gloomy, but I don't really know how much chance I have of, like, becoming more functional or just not feeling crap every now and then. I can, especially if I'm busy, I can push away a lot of the crap for a bit. But the moment that I finish the thing, um, if I finish a big project, instead of feeling a sense of achievement, I often just fall off the cliff, and it's back to this sort of now what, you know?
Mm.
Um, and there's not really any, this is stuff I've been dealing with lately, is there's not really any momentum in life. Like, as much as I've done all the things that I've done, um, with each project, like, what's next? Where is this all going? There's no real direction, and that's frustrating. Um, I finish a project and there's not really anything that comes after that.
Yeah.
I have to find the next thing or come up with the next thing. And yes, I could come up with my own deadlines. Like, you know, I could say, oh, I want to release my next song by this date, but that's made by me. I can change that so it's not convincing. Whereas, you know, with this open weekend, there was a specific weekend, and regardless of whether or not I was prepared, people were going to come. And so I work better with deadlines, and I had that coming. I'm not someone who can half-ass stuff. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it as best I can. So yeah, I did heaps of preparation. I was in the studio instead of once a week. I was in there like every spare day that I had, getting everything sorted. But that's finished, and now it's like, okay, now what? I don't know. There's so much stuff I can do. Like I keep thinking I should work more on my YouTube. I could, you know, I've talked about making t-shirts for a while because I keep coming up with these like really funny ideas, which are sort of like in jokes for my channel and or whatever. Like I could do that, and I have the time to do that, but I don't because there's no deadline, and so I have to really be in a particular state of mind to actually get a lot of that stuff done. So yeah, I don't really know where my life's going. There's a lot of stress that comes up every now and then. Financial things, like I'm living with my parents, so you know I'm fine for now, but I'm still aware of the future. Some point, you know, I'm on government support, but I don't know. Australia's system is quite punitive, and trying to navigate it is incredibly stressful. And I'm just on the regular unemployment support. So at the moment, I've got a medical certificate, but the amount of work they expect me to do when I'm not on the medical certificate, I just stopped being able to cope with. So I'm trying to get them to review that.
Yeah.
I'm at this point, I have no plans to apply for the disability pension because, I mean, part of that involves admitting that things can't change. And if I admit that things can't change, I mean, you know, I've been talking all this stuff about how I don't think there's good chances, but I'm not quite ready to give up. I mean, I'm still going to therapy because I still, you know, have some hope that we'll eventually find something.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I admit that things can't get better, that's probably when, you know, things are going to get a little bit too upsetting, and I will start going more down the suicidal spiral. So yeah.
Right, because focusing on all these negatives, and then Schizoid might be adding basically fuel to the fire with this idea that, you know, generally people can go worse. But
yeah, like I mean, I know all the evidence that I'm aware of suggests that it's not a condition with good prospects, but I'm still pushing back on that. Even so, with all the stuff that I've tried, like it's unusual for a schizoid to come forward for treatment and persist with treatment. And so far, I haven't seen any results. Or like, you know, I've had basically what I've read has been confirmed because the therapies that we've tried. I'm already actually doing a lot of the things that the therapies say to do, like, you know, or by my values and, you know, the cognitive distortions that you talk about in CBT, that's not generally an issue for me. If it is, I'm good at working through it myself. And even having those strategies, it's not really helped. Yeah, so I don't know where the journey is going to end up, but I'm still holding on to the idea that hopefully it won't be too bad. But yeah, I don't have a lot of optimism at the moment. I'm just not ready to.
But you have the determination and motivation to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, like, what else can I do? I don't know if motivation's the right word. Maybe it's more like desperation. Because I don't know what else I can do if this doesn't work. Like if psychology, so with the way that the Australian system works, I've had 10 sessions now, and was able to get an extra 10 sessions under the pandemic arrangements. So I've still got more therapy that I can get government subsidies for. After that, if I want to keep doing psychology, then I've got to fund it from my own pocket. Will it be worth it? I'll decide when I get there. But if I don't really find anything working, then I've got to go back and revisit the idea of like, should I try inpatient stuff, or should I just see how I'm going? If I get a lot worse, then maybe I do need to try something like that. But it's quite expensive here in Australia. We do have public hospitals, but I think their inpatient stuff is more like crisis level. Most of the inpatient stuff that I've looked at is private, and I do have private health insurance, but it's very low level, so it wouldn't pay for it. So I would have to really think about that. But I'm pretty good at saving my money, I guess, because I don't go anywhere and I don't do very much. So living with my parents as well makes it a little bit easier to save money. So like, I do have that a little bit in mind when, maybe I could fund a little bit of it. I don't know. I'll figure out what I do next when I get there if I need to.
Okay, Mariko.
Yeah.
So as a last question, what would be the one thing that you would like to change about your life? Something that you would like to get, or something that you want out of life?
I think if I could just feel some more positive emotions, that'd make it like, yeah, I go through a lot of shit, but if I could feel more positive stuff, that sort of gives you something to work towards, I guess. Like, okay, things are shit, but I can feel this later. And so, yeah, I mean, the closest I get to that, I made a video about this a while ago. The closest I can get to that, I think, is adrenaline. I have noticed the only way that I really feel sort of a buzz these days is if I get that adrenaline hit. And I think that perhaps explains a bit of why performance works for me, because I mean, I'm super nervous before I go up. I have to go to the bathroom like 3 times before I get on stage. But then I get on stage, I do the thing, I come off, and it's that adrenaline and the relief. And like, it's easier for me to talk to people as I make my way to the bar to get a drink. My theory is sort of like, most of those brain chemicals, they're mostly in your brain. Some of it's produced by the stomach. You've got the brain-gut connection. That's that main axis for a lot of the chemicals involved in feel-good chemicals, I guess. So I don't know if I've got a problem with the brain and the gut, or if it's a psychological thing, but adrenaline glands are like everywhere. They're not just in your brain, your gut. Like, you have adrenaline glands elsewhere. And so if you can get them going, you can bypass whatever is wrong with this connection. And so I actually do feel the adrenaline, and it is kind of like, that is probably the best feeling that I get. I realize some people who have maybe more anxiety type problems perhaps don't want that sort of, the flight part, the fight and flight part of it. But yeah, that's the closest I can get at the moment. But I've been reluctant to perform like organized performances, because the place I used to do it is there was an open mic, hasn't recovered since the pandemic, and I don't know where else to go. And I also, it can go wrong if you become addicted to the adrenaline, and then all of a sudden you're base jumping. And just like, I don't think I'm going for that. So I don't want to rely on adrenaline for that, especially because it's not the easiest thing to get. I have to actually go out, organize stuff, do the things. And at the moment, I just don't have the motivation. It's not enough. It's a sort of a short-lived thing.
Yeah.
So if I could have a more lasting sense of enjoyment or excitement, or one of the interesting things about Schizoid is it's making me notice more how other people are different, and like the things that they value, because like they really get into caring about each other, and I really struggle to understand that. And some of the emotional concerns that people have that completely override logic in some cases, I don't know what it is exactly that they're experiencing. I can see that I have a gap there, and I can see that gives other people's lives meaning, and I've spent most of my life looking for something else, but it probably doesn't exist because that's not how our species is. I'm looking for something that is outside our natural psychology, or I don't know. So like I'm probably too far gone to experience that kind of stuff, because I spent my whole life just living in this way, thinking it was completely normal, that I was just a little bit weird. But I mean, now I'm also noticing the ways, like when I go out to the doctors and I've got my fluffy cat hat and I've got a cat mask as well, and I'm just walking around like this cat person, like it's completely normal. And then I realize, yeah, actually I am that weirdo. And you think about the cluster A, odd and eccentric disorders. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. So there's, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to experience what other people are experiencing exactly, but I can see there's some kind of gap, and it would be nice if I could just have something that actually feels fulfilling, actually feels meaningful.
Right.
And I've tried to find things, and I think, the way that I flip from hobby to hobby, I'll think, maybe this is the hobby. This is how my life used to be. My life I used to
Right.
think maybe this will be the thing that finally, sorts my life out, but it never lasts. I can never get into it that much. Yeah, there's a little bit of a sense of jealousy with the people who do have autism, who can get into that thing. I don't experience even that. Trying to stick to music has been difficult even, and I've put so much effort into, reaching the level that I have. Maybe that's another reason I'm switching from thing to thing, because I can never quite get what I need. So if I switch to the next thing, I don't dwell too much on, what I'm not achieving in that. I go to the next thing, and then I can come back to that later, and it keeps it fresh, instead of everything becoming disappointing too quickly. I don't know. Just
So
not
you're
having that.
finding this. So you're finding these positive experiences and meaningful experiences in your own ways, basically. What kind of?
Well, I'm trying to, but I don't think I'm achieving it in enough of a way to, sort my life out and make it feel like it's meaningful. Or yeah, it's really hard. I mean, the most meaningful thing that I can think of in my life, like that I seem instinctively drawn to, is looking after my dog. And he's 10 years old. He's not young. He's got more and more health problems. So, once my dog's not around anymore, I think that's when I'm going to get into some real trouble. But for the moment, like, I'll spend money on sorting out his issues, and I worry about him, and I'll take him to the vet, even when, my mum thinks I'm crazy to take him. But it turns out I was right. He did have a problem. I seem better able to, I'm a lot better at reading animals than I am at, dealing with people's issues. So the dogs will actually come to me if they have a problem, because they know I'll understand better than the rest of the family. So, I mean, clearly that shows that I can connect, just not with humans. I can do the dog thing,
in your own ways. Yeah, in your own ways.
Yeah, and if I'm having a bad morning and I can't get out of bed, eventually he'll dig me out of bed. So, there's some of that going on. Just, yeah, with the rest of my life, I'm trying, but I'm not reaching that point where it feels natural, I guess. Like I'm having to constantly push myself to keep trying and to keep finding things, and it gets tiring. At some point, it would be nice if it was just natural and not something I had to push all this effort at. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have more to be cheerful, to end the whole thing on a cheerful note. But I mean, I'm still on my journey, and I'm still, I update my YouTube with where I'm at now. And maybe in a year's time, we can see where I'm at, and hopefully it'll be better. But just, especially this year being so hard, digging up all the issues, going through the trauma, really looking at my psychology, how I got here, trying to figure it out. Like, it's been such a hard year, and with the rest of the trajectory of my life, it doesn't feel optimistic to me. I'm doing better than I was in that really big depression, sort of 2015 to end of 2017 or early 2018. I'm definitely better than I was then, because there's some days I just couldn't get out of bed and I was really bad. But where I'm at now, I'll manage to sit at that neutral, that constant neutral, and then I will fall off the cliff. Not for as long, except like, I'll probably have like a slightly low mood, but like really falling off the cliff. I'm managing to recover from that enough to keep functioning at some level, but I'm having to manage my energy levels and what I can handle. And it's some days it's really hard, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the purpose of processing trauma, like I don't even know what processing trauma means. Like, is it just remembering all this shit and then what? Like, what do I do with that? Because it just makes me feel crap.
Well, usually, trauma work, it takes some time. So it might take even a couple years for any effect to be seen. So that's also a possibility, maybe.
Yeah, it's I guess because most of my life we have worked on the depression stuff. And so because I thought I had no trauma, I didn't look up trauma-related stuff. So obviously I don't know a huge amount about it. And maybe I will eventually figure it out. But right now, for where I'm at, it's just like, oh my God, is this a mistake to have dug into it? I don't know. Yeah. So, like, as much as as far as Schizoid goes, I am able to present as if I'm fine, and talk more naturally and all that kind of stuff. But I can't say that my life is any better than any other Schizoid, really. I mean, I've achieved a lot, probably, especially given what I'm going through, but I don't feel like it doesn't feel significant to me. I can recognize intellectually. So a lot of the things with my psychology, there's what I actually feel, and then there's the intellectual observation of it. And so I can observe, yes, I've done a lot in my life. And wow, look at all this stuff. Look how far I've come from that, really, closed off, that shell that I was in when I was younger. Like, look how far I've come, and I can talk to people, and I've gotten out there, and I've released music, I've been on stage, all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, okay, intellectually I get that, but I still feel that same kind of empty, or just like, sadness, or there's something missing. All of it just feels kind of like a distraction. And in a lot of ways, I do feel like I'm just passing the time between now and death. Like, I don't really need this middle section of life. The last big goal that I had was to release music, and I did that with my girl band. We made a CD, and at the end of it, I was just like, now what? It's just, I don't know. It looks like I'm doing well, and I think that's part of the reason it's been hard to get diagnosed, because I seem like I'm doing better than I am. But I am actually really struggling. For all the image I can put on, like, the issues are still there, and I'm just better at hiding it than other people.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I feel like it can be very helpful to other people with schizoid.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I hope
also,
I didn't
think
get
most
too
importantly, sorry?
I hope I'm not making people more depressed with, like, yes, I look like I'm doing all this stuff, but I still feel like, I mean, you can still, I guess, the probably the most optimistic thing I can think of is you can still achieve stuff. Whether or not that's going to make you feel any better is a different question, but you can still achieve stuff. And that's perhaps the most optimistic thing I can come up with. Oh dear.
Yeah. It's it's probably a matter of finding the right psychologist as well, someone who is aware and who understands schizoid, because as you said before, and as many people already know
yeah.
that there's not enough information, not enough research, and most therapists or psychologists, they don't even understand what they're dealing with. So
there's so many, like, I had one who was just like, oh, you just need more friends. Like, no, I'm fine, thank you.
yeah.
Man.
Well,
so
I wish you all the best with the work that you're doing, and I hope you will find what you're looking for in terms of these positive experiences. And
yeah.
So how people can find you online?
Yeah,
like your
well,
website, your YouTube?
Yeah, pretty much everything is under DestroyerMariko. Oh, I have a little. I cut up one of my business cards a long time ago. Yay! So like I've got my website, DestroyerMariko.com. I've got my YouTube, which is also DestroyerMariko. I've got a Patreon, which is also DestroyerMariko. And then I'm on a few other things like Instagram and Facebook, but I don't use them as much. Instagram I mainly use for fashion stuff. I only got it in the first place because my Japanese family don't use Facebook, so that's how I connected with them. And then, Instagram being a visual platform, so that's a bit more shallow than the other things that I do. But people can find me there. And I try to translate things into Japanese, but my Japanese isn't very good, so it's probably garbage. But yeah, I'm on a few other platforms, but the main ones I use would be YouTube and Patreon at the moment.
So people can find your music and art there.
Yeah, so the website people has like links to everything. Oh yeah, so my music, DestroyerMariko.bandcamp.com, and I think that has links to like I think there's like a recommended thing which will show you the other bands, but the two main bands that you can find on Bandcamp is AD Destroyer, which I did a collaboration with a guy, and then also Rainbow Death Ray, which was the girl band. So there's some more stuff there. But yeah, in my YouTube, like in my descriptions of my videos and also in the links in the about section, that's got everything as well. So if people want to see what I'm up to, yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mariko.
Yeah, no worries.